Hey guys, it's Toniko, and today I want to talk about feedback, criticism, and critique that no one really talks about in terms of artistic growth. In order to grow and get better, I do agree that receiving feedback and criticism or critique is a great way to see what you need to improve on so your future work is better than the last. However, I'm also aware that some feedback, criticism, and critique can actually hold you back, and in some ways can lead you astray. And because of that, I kind of strategize on the types of feedback I get, how I receive it, who I get it from, types of feedback that actually help me, and types of feedback that I find distracting. Whether or not you should deal with unsolicited criticism, or whether the attitude changes if it's feedback for my personal work versus work for clients. Because I firmly believe that you don't have to listen to every type of feedback, you don't even have to listen to certain types of people, and you really have to be aware whether the feedback or the criticism or the critique leads you away from your own goals. First of all, I'm not really going to address whether you should listen to feedback and criticism based on someone's occupation, whether they're a professional, a hobbyist, a fellow classmate, a teacher, because some of us are limited in terms of the access we have to those types of people. When I'm looking for feedback and critique, I only choose a few number of people. Like, I limit the number of people that I'm getting feedback from. And the reason for this is because when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, you're going to get a lot of different paradox of choices with different feedback and critique that can actually work against each other that might make it hard for you to decide what to move forward with. Back at CalArts, we had film workshop classes. These were classes specifically for students to help finish their films, and the classes revolved for each of the students' film. These film workshop classes had no more than, let's say, 8 to 10 people. Back when I was a student, the last one I had about 5 to 6 people. And the reason for this is so that it's easier to track a student's progress, but at the same time, keep the amount of feedbacks minimal and focused. What I would recommend is choosing a few people that you trust the type of feedback and critique that they give you. And try just a couple people at first, see where that goes. But wait, how will you know what kind of feedback you cater to? What kind of feedback you like to get? So maybe you have your own preferences of the type of feedback you like. Maybe you like someone that's really hard on you and just gives you very harsh feedback, blunt but honest. Or you go with people that are a lot more gentler and they compromise. So it's really up to you, but in case you don't have that or you don't know that, I'm going to give you some examples that I look for in terms of good, solid feedback. Feedback that helps me grow and feedback that I personally appreciate. So first of all, I do want to talk about the constructive feedback that I look for. I always welcome feedback that's there to help resolve technical issues. Like, let's say my drawing looks off, maybe they'll give me suggestions on how to fix it, how to improve it, and just to make things less noodly. Another one is the clarity of my intention. So if I present something and they're not getting it or something's missing, they'll let me know and they'll suggest on how I can make my intentions more clear. Or they could suggest a different alternative. So yes, I do appreciate a lot of feedback that helps me push the idea further and forward and also strengthens it. I think it's also important to get feedback from people who do respect your goals and understands it. Like, let's say I have a certain goal that they disagree with. We can have our disagreements there. We can have different opinions. But I think at the end of the day, they do respect my decisions. They are still willing to help me around, but they're always there to give another perspective, which I also respect too. And of course, I can be convinced. Like, when I was working on my third year film Wolfsong for school, it originally had dialogue. These characters were going to talk to each other like folklore. But my voice actress, Karen, has told me in 3 different occasions that this film would be so much better without dialogue. They emphasized letting the eyes speak for itself, the naturalistic acting, highlighting my friend Denny Schneidermester's music, and making the film way more universal. And I am very thankful to this day that I did listen to her. While it did remove some of the voice actors and voice actresses' hard work and their recorded lines, I think it was a decision for the better. Another thing that I appreciated was that I had a friend who actually sat next to me and just drew over my work, trying to figure out how to push it or how to make it stronger. And I could see him thinking. I could see him disagree with himself. I could see him think and talk about it, and we'd have a discussion right on the spot while he's doing these draw overs. So I thought it was really cool to have someone who is willing to sit with me while trying to figure out how to strengthen something together without having all the answers fully prepared. And something that I look for is the honesty. Like, people who are definitely more objective. Like, they're not there to say, this is amazing, this rocks, no feedback, no notes. They're always there to give their own insights. Whether or not I agree with them, I really do appreciate the support. Because at the end of the day, most of their intentions is to help you grow. Now, the next one I'm going to say, it's kind of like swallowing a bitter medicine because I personally don't look forward to hearing it, but I realize how constructive it is when someone says, hey, you have a habit of doing this. You have a tendency to do this in all of your work. Because you have a certain viewpoint or a certain approach, this is why your work struggles. I guess part of me doesn't like being called out on, and I think sometimes it blurs the line between my character versus the work alone. With this type of stuff, I tend to just absorb it. I don't necessarily have to push back against it or justify it. I just let it sit in within me. But because of that, it allows me to pinpoint where a lot of the issues are coming from within my work, see if it's a constant habit that they say it is, and then decide to work around it or to improve on it. And I think that's why that type of feedback is still very good. Now next, I want to talk about feedback that I find destructive or deconstructive. I've had people giving me feedback where they just state everything that's wrong with it without trying to give me a solution on how to fix or improve it. Another one is when they try to force a dogma down your throat. So it's kind of like not really related to the art anymore or the project. It's more like this person wanting to tell me that they did something that worked for them and they wanted to force it down my throat. Like their way's better. I think I had one teacher that kind of gave me some small notes on this animation thing that I was working on and went on a whole spiel about why I should just animate everything on paper. Pretty sure this person had some good points, but it's not what I was looking for. And back then I didn't have access to such equipment. I think another example is when someone forces down their tastes to you. Like, let's say I'm not a fan of certain styles, but they say, no, you should work in this style. It's the best style ever. If you don't work in this style, you're doing everything wrong. Another feedback that I don't really appreciate is when someone just looks at my stuff and goes, I don't know, there's something wrong with it. I can't put my finger on it, but something is off about it. I'm not feeling it. I don't know. Cool. Another feedback that I've encountered is just like super generic ones. So let's say I animate a fight scene and this person says, think about squash and stretch. Think about the bouncing ball for weight. Like stuff that can be applied to anything without being specific enough to help. I've gotten feedback where it was no longer about the project or the art that I was doing. It was more about critiquing my character, critiquing who I was. Sometimes it was an attack on my character. It got a bit too personal. Sometimes that's what a lot of forums felt like back in the 2000s. And look, sometimes you might need to experience all types of feedback to kind of figure out what kind of feedback is helpful to you and what kind of feedback isn't helpful to you. Back then, I would show my work all the time to everyone and ask for feedback. Nowadays, I'm more conservative with that. And sometimes I choose people that kind of have a similar experience or journey that I do because we'll be in like similar wavelengths when we give each other feedback. Sometimes I'll choose people who have more experience on me in certain genres or certain styles. Like a part of me wanted to get better at action animation, so I reached out to multiple action animation people, and I feel like only one or two of them gave me useful and helpful feedback. But that's also to further prove that even though someone might be in a different skill level, whether they're higher or whether they have the job that you seek and they're excelling at that department, may not be the best at giving you feedback or guidance. Because when it comes to that stuff, it's also a whole different skill set. Now, I do want to talk about unsolicited feedback because as someone who posts work online, and over time I've built a following, I get a lot of unsolicited feedback and criticism on my work, whether it's on social media or whether it's on YouTube. There's a lot of people who just want to give me feedback and criticism, regardless of whether they're constructive, deconstructive, blunt, disrespectful, respectful. It's a mixed bag of stuff, but they're all unsolicited, meaning I did not ask for feedback. And that's just the overall nature of putting your work out there. You're gonna get a lot of different types of responses. Some of them favorable, some of them unfavorable. That's just something that you just have to accept. Now, going back to unsolicited feedback, I don't necessarily engage or respond to those comments or those messages. It's not my responsibility to address that unless it was customer service related, unless it was a business situation, or if there was a valuable discussion that could come from this, then maybe. But I will say that it's not my responsibility to respond or to engage with that, nor is it yours if you're going through the same thing. But I will say that not all unsolicited feedback is bad, because some of them are quite constructive, some of them have made good points. So I just keep them in mind for future work that I do. I don't really address it, I don't really respond to them, I just think about it. See if there's value in the words that they say, and if there is, then maybe I'll think about it for my next work. If there's not, just discard it, just move on. Now, when it comes to putting work out there in general, no matter what you do, no matter what skill level you're at, no matter how cool or how good you think you are, you're always going to get someone that feels negatively about your work. So here's one point that I want to make that I want you to keep in mind. So when you're sharing your work that you want feedback on, it's good to sort of give a bit of background information of what kind of areas you want to improve on or whatever goal you have in mind. I know it sounds generic, but I usually try to be a bit more specific. I'll tell them what I'm struggling with, what my weaknesses are, what I'm trying to resolve, and how I'm trying to attempt it in a pass of my work. Like, yeah, I kind of give them background information on how I'm feeling. Like, one of my weaknesses is coming up with strong, solid poses or dealing with like action animation. So I would do projects of me trying to address those issues, but then I will show that work to someone else and say, hey, here's what I struggled with. Here's something that I'm trying. What do you think? If it's still not there, how do I get closer to that? When I'm storyboarding a sequence, I'll ask, I'm trying to go for this tone and this mood. Are these storyboards selling it? How do I make that feeling stronger there? Or let's say you're trying to show your portfolio and you want to get into a studio like, let's say Pixar or Disney. You could say, I want to be a storyboard artist at one of these studios. Is my work closer to that? Am I a good candidate for that? And how can I get closer to that based on my work? And I think you will get a much better feedback response and someone who can actually help you get closer to your goal and overall direction. Like sometimes I'll get emails from students, from people who show me their work and just say, hey, do you have any suggestions? How do I improve? Any advice? And it's hard to answer stuff like that because they don't really state what they're trying to do, what their goals are, where they want to work, where they want to end up, because you're probably just going to get very surface level, shallow feedback. So just to restate that, it's a good practice to give a bit more background information on what you're trying to do with your work, where you're struggling, and suggestions on how you can resolve that. I think the last one I want to talk about is, let's say you get the feedback and maybe you have the tendency to be a bit more defensive or to sort of push back. You're usually told not to do any of that when you're receiving feedback. I usually do it when there's a bit of a misunderstanding or when I want to continue having a conversation about it. I don't do the route of saying things like, oh, you just don't get it. It's not my style. I wouldn't do that. You're wrong. It's more like, someone gives me feedback and they're kind of misunderstanding my overall intentions, so I would try to remind them the actual intention that I have and have a conversation about it. So an example is like someone wanted me to do sadness in a certain way, but I had a very specific type of sadness that I want to portray in a character. So I would just remind them, here's what I'm going for. What do you think? Maybe they'll agree with it, maybe they'll disagree with it, but at least you'll start a conversation there during a feedback sesh. But at least your intentions are stated. But what about work? So I've been mostly talking about the creative journey, but let's say it's for work. Let's say it's for school. I think it's still a good idea to let your intentions be known, but they have the final say. If they say, oh, change it regardless, even if you don't agree with it, well, it's your choice. It's a job, it's an assignment. It's your choice to follow it or not. You just have to be aware of the consequences for that. So yeah, wow, this conversation actually started with me talking about why it's a good idea to limit who you get feedback from, what I think is good constructive feedback to me, and what I think is deconstructive or not so helpful at all, and who you should be getting feedback from. But I also went into a tangent of unsolicited feedback, how to get more precise, catered feedback, whether or not you should fight against a feedback or whether there's a bit of pushback. I think the overall thing about feedback is it's your choice whether you want to listen to it or not, or whether you want to follow it or not. The reason why I wanted to make this video was because I myself am very easily influenced. When someone tells me stuff and I somehow see their point, I will try to sort of compromise with it. And that could lead me to procrastinating with my overall goal. So I will just say, keep your feedback group small, keep a small trusted group, and even that group can change a bit based on the project that you're working on. Interested in learning hand-drawn animation or learning how to finish an animated shot from beginning to end? Have a look at the store where you'll find the complete Introduction to 2D Animation video course, tutorials, and other resources. Learn classical animation approaches, drawing, lectures, techniques, and other process videos. Visit the store through the link in the description below.